I looked down and mumbled to myself, no matter what happens, I'm going to get you back to the real world. Asuna squeezed my hand and said with a smile, we'll go back together. We finally arrived at the teleport gate square. Only a few players were there, huddled against the cold wind that made it feel like winter was coming. I turned to Asuna, and her warm smile gave me comfort. Without thinking, I said, Asuna, I want to spend the night with you. I didn't want to be away from her. Not after what we just went through. The memory of our close call still freaked me out. The crazy look in his eyes, the sword stabbing towards us, and the feeling of my hand sinking into. Well, it was a feeling I didn't want to think about. Those images would probably haunt my dreams tonight. Here's the rewritten text. I was totally sure about it. Asuna looked at me with super wide eyes, like she finally got what I was saying. She nodded slightly and her cheeks turned pink. When we got to her apartment in Selmberg, I was still blown away by how fancy it was. But what really made it special was the cozy feeling you got when you walked in. There were all these cool decorations everywhere, and you could tell Asuna had great taste. But when she saw the place, she started stuttering. Oh my gosh, it's such a mess. I haven't been home in ages. She laughed nervously and began picking up stuff. Don't worry about cleaning, I wanted to say, but instead, she told me, I'll start making dinner. You can read the newspaper or something. I just said, okay. Asuna took off her gear and put on an apron, then headed into the kitchen. I plopped down on the super comfy couch, feeling pretty relaxed. I grabbed a thick stack of papers from the table. They called it a newspaper, but that was stretching it. Really, it was just a bunch of stories thrown together by players who made a living collecting info and selling it as news. But in an Ankrad, where entertainment was scarce, this paper was a treasure. Lots of players even paid to get it regularly. I picked up the 4-page paper and glanced at the front page, then I tossed it aside, grossed out. The main story was about my duel with Heathcliff. The headline blasted, Dual Blades Wielder Unveiled, mercilessly crushed by Holy Sword. And to make it worse, there was a picture of me taken with a special crystal lying on the ground, defeated, while Heathcliff stood over me, looking like a hero. It was pretty humiliating. I couldn't help but think that I just made someone's legend even bigger. But maybe that was a good thing. If people thought I was no big deal, they would leave me alone. I pushed those thoughts aside and started browsing the item marketplace listings. Just then, a delicious smell came from the kitchen. It was dinner time. Asuna had cooked up some steak from one of the crazy cattle-like monsters that roam in Monkrad. She'd topped it with her famous soy sauce, which made all the difference. The meat wasn't super rare or anything, but that sauce was like magic. Asuna grinned as she watched me chow down. After dinner, we sat on our cozy sofas, facing each other and sipping tea. It was a really chill way to spend the evening. Asuna was super chatty, telling me all about her favorite swords and the cool places she wanted to visit on different floors of the castle. I kind of zoned out and let her do most of the talking. But when she suddenly stopped speaking, I got a little worried. She stared into her teacup like she was searching for something, her face looking tough and serious, like she was getting ready for a fight. Hey, what's wrong? I started to ask, but before I could finish, Asuna slammed her cup down on the table. Okay, she said, taking a deep breath. She stood up, walked over to the window, and touched the wall to bring up some options. Then, in an instant, the lanterns in the corners of the room went dark. It was like she had flipped a switch. Suddenly everything went black. But my special search skill kicked in, and my eyes adjusted to the darkness. The room transformed into a cool blue color, like a scene from a movie. Asuna stood out at the window, glowing with a soft light that came from the town outside. I was amazed by how beautiful it all looked. Asuna's long hair appeared dark blue in the dim light, and her arms and legs seemed to shine like they had their own built-in glow sticks. She was wearing a tunic, but her skin stood out against the darker fabric. Asuna just stood there, silent and still, staring out the window with her back to me. She was hunched over so I couldn't see her face. But when she pulled her left hand close to her chest, it looked like she was trying to make a tough decision. I wanted to ask her what was going on, but just as I was about to speak up, she made a move. Here's the rewritten text. With a tiny ping, she drew a line in the air with her finger. Her status window popped up, filled with glowing purple options against a dark blue background. She started tapping on them, and it looked like she was getting ready for something. Then in an instant, her knee-high socks vanished into thin air. Her legs were now exposed, and I couldn't help but stare. She moved her fingers again, and this time, her one-piece outfit disappeared too. My jaw dropped, and my eyes went wide. Now she was standing there in just her underwear, two tiny pieces of white cloth that barely covered her up. Please don't stare," she stuttered, her voice shaking. I couldn't look away, no matter how hard I tried. She folded her arms across her chest and fidgeted for a moment before looking up at me. As our eyes met, she slowly dropped her arms to her sides. It was like a jolt of electricity had run through my body. The word beautiful didn't even come close to describing her. Her skin glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to dance across her body. Her hair looked like the finest silk, smooth and shiny. As she moved, I noticed that her curves were even more stunning than I'd first thought. Her hips and legs were toned and lean, like an athlete's. What really caught my attention was how perfectly proportioned she was. It was as if she had been designed to be visually stunning. But this wasn't just a computer-generated image, she was real. And that made her all the more amazing. Imagine a sculpture so amazing, it's like God himself brought it to life. That's what Asuna looked like in the virtual world of Sato When we first logged in, our bodies were created using data from the Nerve Gear headset. It was like a miracle that her avatar turned out so beautiful. I couldn't stop staring at her. She was half-dressed, and my mind went blank. I would have kept staring forever if she hadn't spoken up. But then she looked down, and her face turned bright red, even in the dark blue light. Go on. You too, she said, stumbling over her words. Are you going to embarrass me? It took me a while, but finally, I figured out what was going on. When I told Asuna I wanted to spend the night together, she thought I meant something more than just sleeping next to each other. As soon as I realized this, my mind started racing with panic. Oh, I just made a huge mistake. Wait, no, that's not what I meant. I stuttered. I just wanted to sleep in the same room as you. That's all. But it was too late. My words had already spilled out in a super awkward way. Asuna's face went blank, and then she looked like she wanted to explode. Her eyes filled with shame and anger, and her fists clenched up tight. Why, you, she growled. I could see the fury in her eyes, and I knew I was in trouble. Asuna swung her fist at my face, using all her speed and agility to make it a powerful punch. But just as it was about to hit me, the game's safety system kicked in. The room filled with loud noises and purple sparks, stopping Asuna's attack. I'm sorry. Forget I said that. I waved my arms wildly, trying to apologize before Asuna could try to hit me again. It was all my fault. I swear. And besides, can you even, do that? I asked, hoping to distract her from my mistake. In the world of Sao, things just got really interesting. The girl finally stopped fighting, but she still looked super angry and frustrated. You didn't know? She asked, her voice shaking with rage. I shook my head. No, I had no idea. She looked embarrassed all of a sudden and spoke in a quiet voice. If you dig deep into the game's options, there's a secret setting called moral code removal. I was shocked. This wasn't in the game's manual, or even in the beta version. I felt like I'd been missing out on a big secret. But then I started wondering, had she done this before? I blurted it out without thinking. Does that mean you've before I could finish? Her fist came flying at my face again. Of course not, she exclaimed. I learned about it from someone in our guild. I quickly apologized over and over, trying to make things right. I didn't want to get hit again. It took a while to calm things down. The only light in the room came from a small candle on the table. It shone down on Asuna as she snuggled into my arms. I gently ran my finger over her back, feeling her soft skin. It was an amazing sensation. Just touching her made me feel happy and relaxed. Asuna's eyes fluttered open, and she smiled up at me. Sorry, did I wake you? She whispered. I shook my head, and she continued. I was having a dream. About the real world. It felt so weird. She nuzzled her face into my chest, still smiling. In her dream, Asuna had gotten really scared. She was worried that our whole adventure in Amonkhet meeting me, fighting together, was just a dream itself. She looked up at me with big concerned eyes, and I could tell she was still thinking about it. Thank goodness things didn't turn out that way, I said with a sigh of relief, but my friend looked at me like I was crazy. That's weird. Don't you want to get out of here? She asked. I nodded eagerly. Yeah, I definitely wanted to leave. But there was something holding me back. I've spent so much time here, I explained. 2 whole years have passed, and they mean a lot to me now. My friend's expression turned serious, and she took my hand from her shoulder, pressing it against her chest, her voice filled with regret. Kirito, I'm sorry. I should have been the one to finish that fight. I felt a rush of surprise, and my breath caught in my throat. Then I let it out slowly, shaking my head. No way, I said firmly. Kirito came after me, and I'm the one who pushed him to do what he did. I locked eyes with Asuna and nodded slowly. Her hazel eyes sparkled with tears. She took my hand and gently kissed it. I felt a rush of emotions as she whispered, I'll be here to help you through the tough times. We'll face it together, no matter what. Those were the words I had always wanted to say but never could. Now my voice shaking, they poured out of me like my heart was speaking directly. And my voice was barely audible. But I forced myself to continue. We'll be there to protect you. My promise sounded tiny and uncertain, even to my own ears. But I meant it with all my heart. I made a face, and then I gave her hand a squeeze. You're really strong, Asuna, I said, way stronger than me. She looked at me in surprise, and then a smile spread across her face. No way. That's not true, she said. In the real world I'm actually pretty shy. I like to hide behind others and let them take charge. She started to giggle as she remembered something. My brother bought this game, but then he had to leave for a work trip on the day it came out. So, I got to try it out first. He was really sad to leave without playing it. And now I've been playing it for 2 years. I bet he's super mad at me. I thought she might have gotten the short end of the stick, but I nodded anyway. You should go apologize to him, I said. Yeah, I guess you're right, she said, looking down. Her brave words didn't sound so confident. All of a sudden, she looked nervous and unsure of herself. Asuna snuggled up close to me, her whole body pressed against mine. Hey Kirito. I know this sounds weird after what I just said, but maybe we should take a break from the front lines, she whispered. I was taken aback. What's going on? Asuna's voice trembled slightly as she admitted. I'm really scared. We finally connected in a way that feels amazing, and I don't want anything to ruin it. The thought of going back into battle is terrifying. Maybe I'm just exhausted from all this. I gently brushed her hair with my fingers, and to my surprise I found myself agreeing with her. You're right, I said. I'm tired too. It didn't take a genius to figure out that constant fighting was taking a toll on us. Day after day of intense battles was draining, especially after a shocking day like today. Imagine pulling on a strong bowstring until, snap, it breaks. That's what happens when you don't give yourself a break. I was feeling worn out from all the battles, and my desire to fight was fading away. All I could think about was being with this amazing girl, and getting to know her better. I wrapped my arms around her, and buried my face in her super soft hair. It felt so good to be close to her. Then, I had an idea. Hey, I know a really cool place we could go, I said. It's on the 22nd floor, in the southwest area. There are tons of trees, lakes, and no scary monsters. Plus, there's a quiet little village with some cozy log cabins for sale. Let's move there together. The moment of truth. I stopped talking for a second, trying to find the right words. That's when Asuna looked at me with her super shiny eyes, and said, and then, I took a deep breath, and made myself keep going. Let's get married, I stuttered. I'll never forget the amazing smile she gave me. Okay, she said, nodding her head. A big tear rolled down her cheek, but she was still smiling. So you're probably wondering about relationships in the virtual world of Sword Art Online. Well, there are 4 kinds. First, there are people you don't know at all, complete strangers. Then there are friends. When you add someone as a friend, you can send them simple messages, and even find them on the map. The next level is being in a guild together. Guild members get some cool perks, like extra experience points, when they fight together. It's like having a team that's got your back. Here's the rewritten text. But there's a catch. When you're part of a guild, you have to give them a cut of all the call, that's the money in this virtual world you earn. My friend Asuna and I were already friends and guildmates, but we wanted to try something new. So we temporarily left the guild and joined back up as a married couple. Getting married in this game is super easy. One person just sends a message asking the other to marry them. And if they say yes, you're done. It's way simpler than getting married in real life. But here's the thing, when you get married in SIWO, you have to share everything with your partner. That means all your items, all your info, everything is out in the open. Imagine being able to see exactly what your partner is up to in the virtual world of Aincrad. You can check out their status screen whenever you want, and you both share the same inventory, so you can work together to collect awesome items. But getting married in Aincrad isn't easy. When you tie the knot, you're basically showing your partner all your secrets, and that can be scary. In a world where people often betray and trick each other, it's hard to trust someone enough to get married. And to make things worse, there aren't many girls in Aincrad, which makes it tough for guys to find a partner. The 22nd floor of Aincrad is a pretty chill place. It's one of the less crowded areas of the castle, and it's huge. The floor is shaped like the bottom of an egg, with lots of room to explore. But most of it is covered in thick forests and filled with lakes. If you're looking for other players, you might find a tiny village, but that's about it. It's a pretty peaceful place, but also kind of lonely. The wilderness was a breeze. No scary monsters to fight. And the maze, easy peasy. We finished the whole floor in just 3 days, and hardly anyone even remembered it. Asuna and I decided to treat ourselves to a cozy little log cabin in the forest. It was the perfect place to relax. But here's the thing, buying a house in ASCII isn't easy, even if it's small. Asuna suggested selling her awesome apartment in Selmberg, but I wouldn't let her do it. That place was too cool to get rid of. So, we came up with a different plan. We sold some of our rare and valuable items, with the help of our friend Agile. He helped us raise the funds we needed. When Agile found out we were leaving, he looked pretty disappointed. I guess he was going to miss us. But Asuna and I were excited to start our new life in our little cabin in the woods. We got a pretty cool offer from our friend. He said we could use the upstairs area anytime we wanted. But let's be real. A general store isn't exactly the most romantic spot for a honeymoon. And can you imagine the chaos if people found out that Asuna, a total celebrity, was married? Just thinking about it gave me goosebumps. A quiet place like the 22nd floor would be perfect for us to chill out in peace. Asuna walked over to the bedroom window and squealed. Wow! Look at that view. The cabin was tiny with only 2 rooms, but that view made up for it. Since we were near the edge of the area, we could see a huge chunk of the sky above the trees and lakes. It was really beautiful. Asuna leaned out the window taking in the sights, and I had to agree, it was pretty amazing. Imagine living in a world where a huge stone ceiling hangs over your head almost all the time. That's what life is like in Aincrad. So when you finally get to see the sky up close, it feels amazing. You feel free. Asuna and I were taking a break from organizing our stuff, and we walked over to the edge of the area. I wrapped my arms around her from behind and said, "Hey, let's not get too close to the edge. Okay, I don't want you to fall." It was a great view, but safety first. Being with Asuna made me feel happy and warm inside. She's my wife now, which is still hard to believe. I thought about how far I've come since I got stuck in this virtual world. Before, my life was pretty routine: school, home, repeat. I didn't have big dreams or anything, but that was all before Aincrad. Now the real world feels like a distant memory. Everyone's goal is to beat the game and get back home. Asuna wants that, I want that, every player wants that. But the weird thing is, thinking about actually escaping makes me a little worried. What would happen if we really did make it out? I squeezed Asuna tight, but she winced in pain. "Hey Kirito, that hurts." "What's wrong?" I apologized, feeling a bit embarrassed. But then I asked her something that had been on my mind. "Asuna is what we have. Just part of the game. Will it disappear when we log out and go back to the real world?" Asuna's eyes flashed with emotion as she turned to face me. "Are you trying to make me mad?" she asked. Her voice firm. "I don't fall in love just for fun, Kirito. Even if this was a normal game, and we weren't stuck here, my feelings would still be real." She gently grabbed my face with her hands, looking straight into my eyes. "One thing I've learned in this crazy virtual world is to never give up. If we make it back to the real world, I'll find you again, and I'll fall for you all over again." I couldn't believe how strong Asuna was, not just in the game, but also in her heart. She always knew what to say to make me feel better, and I admired her for that. How many times had she amazed me with her bravery and kindness? Too many to count. Was I really that weak? Or was it just nice to have someone to lean on? Either way, it felt amazing to have someone's support. For now, I was safe and didn't have to worry about fighting. As I sat there, I started to daydream. My arms were wrapped around something warm and cozy, and it smelled really good. As I gazed out at the lake, I noticed a float just sitting there on the water. It wasn't moving at all. The sunlight sparkled on the calm surface, making me feel sleepier by the minute. Before I knew it, I let out a huge yawn. I pulled in my fishing rod, but all I caught was nothing. Just a lonely silver hook dangling from the end of the line. I stared out at the water, but my bait was gone again. My friend and I had been living on the 22nd floor for 10 whole days now. To try and catch some food, I had swapped out my sword skills for fishing. Yeah, I know it sounds cool to be a fisherman and live off the land, but so far it was a total bust. I'm actually really good at fishing. My skill level is over 600. You'd think I'd at least catch a tiny fish by now. But nope, nothing was biting. I had bought a big pail of bait from the village, but it was almost empty now. This is such a waste of time, I said to myself, throwing down my rod and rolling over in frustration. The cold breeze blowing off the lake made me shiver, but luckily I had a warm coat on. My friend Suna had made it for me using her tailoring skills. It wasn't perfect, but it did the trick. We were both still learning and getting better at our skills. It was getting close to winter in the world of Aincrad, or November in the real world, but I didn't think the changing seasons would affect my fishing trip. I felt pretty lucky anyway, especially since I had an amazing wife like Asuna. As I lay there, a big smile spread across my face. I couldn't help but feel happy when I thought about her. Just then, I heard a voice above me. "Are they biting?" it asked. I quickly sat up and saw a man standing over me. He was all bundled up in a heavy coat and a warm hat with ear flaps. And guess what? He had a fishing rod just like mine. I couldn't believe my eyes. The guy had to be at least 50 years old. His face was lined with wrinkles, and he wore wire-rimmed glasses perched on the end of his nose. It's super rare to see someone that age playing a game like this, especially one that's packed with hardcore gamers. I mean, I'd never seen anyone even close to his age playing before. Just as I was thinking this, he spoke up. "I'm not a computer character," he said with a smile, like he knew exactly what I was thinking. He climbed down the hill, his movements steady, and sure, I felt my face get hot with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," I stuttered. "You just really surprised me." The old guy chuckled, a deep laugh that made his whole body shake. "No need to apologize," he said. "I'm definitely the oldest player in this game. By a long shot." He laughed again, clearly enjoying the surprise he'd caused. As I sat there, a guy plopped down beside me and started rummaging through his pouch. He pulled out a box of bait and began to fiddle with his fishing rod. "My name's Nishida," he said with a smile. "I'm a fisherman now, but before this I had a totally different job. I used to be in charge of keeping the internet safe for a company called Toto Broadband." He chuckled and added, "Sorry, no business cards for me anymore." I got a feeling that he was here for a reason, and it wasn't just to catch some fish. You see, Toto Broadband worked with a company called Argus, which controlled the internet lines that connected to this huge online game called SAO. I introduced myself as Kirito, a newcomer from, well, let's just say, from higher up. Then I asked Nishida, "So, did you used to take care of the internet connections for SAO?" He nodded, his eyes sparkling with recognition. "Yeah, that was my job. I was in charge of keeping those connections running smoothly."